I'm on.
Hey man, I am on as well. It's good to see another OTX NT starting up. It's been weeks, man. This has been crazy. Glad to do it though.
Really excited, man. I'm pumped. Good to see you.
Very
Uh,
nice to see you. I miss you,
yeah,
man. I know you're
I know.
busy with Easter and all that stuff, and
We had a
same here.
graduation on
Yes.
Saturday. That was fun.
Let's
So
not
yeah,
forget, Andrew also does many things with Wayland Baptist University, like being the dean of the Arizona campus. So comes with a lot of stuff. So, well, I'm happy you're here. Hey, if you're listening, just do us a favor, throw a comment in there and say something like, Andrew, you're a busy, cool man, or something like that. That all helps with the algorithm as well. So even
that's
those
right.
kind of comments
We
help.
should have a vote. Vote who sports the best preacher look? Is it Ben or is it Andrew?
Oh, don't even start that.
You're gonna
Yeah.
win 100% on that, by the way.
He's gonna
But
get the Nam shirt on
that's
today, right? So,
but give us your vote. Right
yeah.
now. Yeah, stick it in
So,
the comments.
speaking of Easter, even though we're about 2 weeks past Easter now, we have an article that really we wanted to discuss. And so the article is this. Maybe you've seen it already. I know many people have, but I know you and I wouldn't want to talk about it. This is Richard Dawkins laments the decline of cultural Christianity in the UK amid surging Islam. Um, and so I want to talk about that because it has to do with some things that he was noticing in England that was happening around Easter time. So let's talk about that in a minute. But do you want to start us off with prayer and get going?
Let's pray. Yeah, because the Lord's Prayer actually has a little cultural Christianity
There you
request in there.
go.
So, yeah, please join me in the Lord's Prayer, if you will. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. So here's the deal now. We're looking at this article. It's very interesting how this all came out. So around Easter time, Richard Dawkins, who the past generation, the past decade or so, has been really one of the most outspoken atheists, and really has tried to do his best to try to destroy Christianity as much as he has. Um, and it's interesting that what really kind of got this comment going was, it just so happened that around Easter time, the month of Ramadan is also taking place. And so for Muslims, that's a month of fasting from sun up to sundown, they fast. And so and it's kind of the month. Everything kind of comes to a halt. It's a huge thing. Then there's a big celebration at the end of Ramadan. And so England has become very, very Muslim. How much so in their influence that here's what started this whole thing is that he noticed that in England that there was barely any, it seemed to be anything with promoting Easter, but it was Ramadan that was being showcased. In fact, so this article that we're reading, it's about it's called, once again I go back to it. This comes from the Christian Post. Richard Dawkins laments the decline of cultural Christianity in the UK. He says, while he's happy that the number of practicing Christians in the UK is plummeting, he also acknowledged that Islam appears to be gathering strength in Europe as Christianity recedes. It says he was slightly horrified that Ramadan lights adorned London's Oxford Street during Easter. So this is the point. He sees that now Ramadan seems to be overshadowing Easter in England, and he doesn't like that. And so as a result, there becomes this conversation that happens, and so he takes issue with this because he says that the UK is a fundamentally Christian country, and he values the Christian ethos. And then he goes on to say, "I call myself a cultural Christian," which is absolutely shocking. I'm
Yeah.
not a believer, but there's a distinction, he says, between believing Christian and a cultural Christian. And so I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. So that's kind of the big takeaway. Those are the big sound bites, right? Of we're not a Muslim country, we're a Christian country. And even though I don't like Christianity, I'm a cultural Christian, and England should stay a cultural Christian country. So, any thoughts? Because you've read through it, you've kind of had a chance to look. What are your things? Do you think so far?
Yeah, part of me, it just kind of thought there was a sadness for me toward Dawkins, which I never expected to have, because there's a certain pitiful reality going on. He's becoming an older man and he is waning in influence. I don't know if you watched the video, but the favorite part for me was when the free Zoom session limit blurb popped up, and the host quickly clicked that off and said, "I've just found notice that we got to wrap this up pretty quickly." So whatever show this was on, he didn't warrant a paid Zoom subscription for the interview. This was once the guy, right?
Yeah.
This was the guy who was going to take down Christianity in the West, and now he's reaching a point where he's not as influential as he once was, and he is watching the fruit of his work, which
Yeah.
was the dismantling of Christianity in the West. But he likes the fruit, and I think Doug Wilson has a good video. Others have done this. You love the fruit, but you hate the tree. So you chop down the tree, but you're wondering where's the fruit going. We need to hold on to all the pieces of Christianity that Christianity produced in our society, but we can't have Christianity. And when you kill the tree, you don't have the fruit. And so this is something that I think people are awakening up to, that you aren't going to get the good that Christianity brings without a genuine faith in the claims of Christianity. And there are a lot of people who have enjoyed freedom of speech and enjoyed certain benefits. Christianity is very promoting of women, which secularism has enjoyed that undergirding of Christian influence. But he recognizes, Islam doesn't share that. Islam has some negative things. And of course, secularism has turned on Christianity, and it's got its own cultural things. The reality is the fruit of secularism we're seeing is a much less beautiful thing than what Christianity provided.
Yeah.
And so, it is, to me, he could be framed as an old guy trying to climb onto his culture when he is an architect of the destruction of that culture.
Yeah.
And so judgment is real. So I'm not as worried about the Islamic influence, but I think Islam is actually one of the leading alternatives to Christianity in the West. The other is an abject jumping into just total secularism, which I think is marked by the LMNOP movement. Where London is hosting Ramadan lights, in Christianity in America, we've got the president on Easter Sunday promoting a day of visibility for what Christianity views as a abomination.
Yeah.
So I think America shows the secularist approach, and we know what the cultural secularism produces. It produces a rebellion against male and female, and a rebellion against marriage as granted by God, the institution of the family. And in London, we're seeing the influence and the cultural fruit of Islam, which rightly Dawkins suggests is going to be very negative. It's going to be very much restrictive of women. And as far as the secular values, that audience that I mentioned carefully, because I don't want to get shadow banned, that audience is also going to be radically shunned by Islam. And so this is the fruit. These are the trees that the West is pursuing. And the fruit is absolutely not going to be beautiful Christmas carols.
So, but here's the thing. I think that one of the things that we're seeing, and we've been watching this trend, and you see it even on a local level too, is the growth is taking place in areas of tradition that people are looking for answers. And I think secularism, or at least the anemic church, the one that is I would say seeker church, those kind of things where high church, the ones that have like barely done anything, the culturally Christian kind of churches, that people are looking at that and they're saying, I want nothing to do with that. And you do see people are being drawn towards Islam. They're being drawn towards orthodoxy. They're being drawn towards Catholicism. So that is driving people to say, I want to go someplace that it has definitive answers, that stands for something, that's rooted something that roots me into tradition, into the past. And I think that's one thing too that you're seeing, that there's a lot of like churches that have just decided that no, we're cool with the shell of Christianity, but with no depth. That's how you can still have a country that claims to be, but there's nothing that's there. There's the shell of it that's left. So I do think that and then the other part of that too is this, and this is, as you've just said too, is, you know, we've said this many times, that the answer to to a country is that there's no such thing as a neutral country, right? That the ideals of, we want to have a secular neutral country, it's not possible. That if you shove Christianity out, it will be filled with something else. It's not going to be, because you're going to have to choose your morality from somewhere. You're going to have to choose your rule from somewhere. And so if and this is where I think Baptists, we get a little bit uneasy about this, because Baptists traditionally, we believe, and it's even Baptist Faith and Message, we want freedom of religion, and we want a separation, a healthy separation of church and state. And if Andrew, if you want to pull that up for us while I'm talking for a second, I'd appreciate that. What we see on BFM 2000 on church and state, and I get that we come from a place where we recognize that Baptists have been persecuted, that it's not always been easy, especially in our history. However, I think that sometimes Baptists may take that too far, and understand that, yes, we want freedom of religion, but we also want to recognize that that there's going to be some religion that's at the top that's going to rule. And as you have rightly said, that it's in England, it seems like the religion that's going to rule at some point. Dawkins is lamenting it will be Islam. Here, right now, it seems like it's the alphabet that will be, and that becomes the void. It's it's filling up. That's the religion of the state, and it's at odds with what Christianity is. So to just say that we can have this neutral ground, it's not going to stay neutral. It's not just that England is going to remain neutral. That's what he's seeing, is it's not remaining neutral. It's not that they've just become secular and they have their own fruits of Christianity. No, they say there's no fruits here, so now we will grab something else and go towards that.
Yeah, and what's funny is, the whole Christian nationalism discussion, which is supposed to put us on our heels, which kind of makes me smile that so many people are done playing the game.
Yeah.
I love my nation and I love Jesus Christ. Therefore, I'm a Christian and I support my nation. And it has nothing to do with supremacy of a race over another race.
Yeah.
They're trying to tie like just connotations of different phrasing together and make us nervous. The reality is, England is a Christian nation. People forget this.
It's true.
The king is the head of the church and the state. And this shows you that politics is not simply the answer, because you actually have a nation who is constituted as a Christian nation that won't stand for Christianity. I mean, it's totally just folded, and they have played the game of this secular/Christian compromise, but really secularism has pushed Christianity completely out of the public sphere in Britain. And because secularism had a tremendous appreciation for cross-cultural outreach, they were open to Islam in a way that they were not open to Christianity. And now they're seeing pretty soon that, I think the prime minister is the first Muslim prime minister. If I'm wrong on that, please correct me. But very, very interesting times where you have Britain moving in a direction like this. And Dawkins, being part of that country, is recognizing the results. But yeah, if someone refuses to believe in God, it's not that they'll worship nothing, it's that they'll worship anything. And this is what is entering into the public discourse, largely in the West, which sadly, I'm a Marquez, and I trace my heritage to Spain and Portugal, when the wars with Islam were advancing into Europe, and they were fighting a bloody battle to keep Islam from taking over Western Europe. And now the West of Europe is just inviting a complete conversion to Islam and bringing Islam in and promoting it. I mean, it's a remarkable turn of events over the last 1,000 years. Christ is king, so I'm not really worried about it. But there used to be a certain fear of this because Islam has had a very strong and very clear mission to take over the world in an aggressive militaristic sense. So this is, he ought to be concerned. He ought
Yeah.
to be very concerned. America is not quite there because we have a much stronger commitment to the Christian faith that was not folded in Europe, and I think much of that goes to the American story being less held hostage to the institutions of higher ed, and that being one of the pieces. But I mean, Europe was just gutted of belief in its institutions, and that trickled down to its the institutions preparing people for ministry. And so you get pastors who don't really believe. And, he was really trying to defend himself in this video to say, I want you to know, I don't believe any of it. I don't believe any of that Christian stuff. It's all nonsense to me. But I really like, I prefer it too, and it's just kind of so funny because he's talked himself into a circle, and he's a very intelligent person. He knows that this is not a tenable situation.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? I think right now we should actually be praying hard for Richard Dawkins because maybe this is an opportunity for the gospel to penetrate a very hard heart.
Yeah.
The reality is, he tries to pin the host in the video saying, do you believe in the virgin birth? And she's really having a hard time to try to dodge that question. So I think she kind of would like to affirm that, but was embarrassed to affirm it in front of him. If you watch the video, I think you can kind of detect that. It's a miraculous thing, Richard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that this doesn't happen normal. This isn't a regular occurrence. We're not stupid. The Bible claims miracles happen, that God himself, the maker of this universe that we live in, reached in and augmented his own rules for the sake of revealing himself in a spiritual and powerful way.
Yeah.
This is what we believe. What he believes about life somehow spontaneously becoming alive is as absurd of anything he pushes on Christianity, because his is motivated by nothing and ours is motivated by an eternal God. So, we can get into this debate, but the reality is that his position, why does he even care? It's totally a preference.
Yeah.
It's totally an accident. It's deterministic. It's evolutionary. And if it is time for Islam to come and do away with Christianity, so be it. And if AI comes in and terminates that, so be it. Your opinions are absolutely meaningless in the system that you have promoted and believed in. So it's sad to me. At the same time, wouldn't it be amazing if God decided to convert Richard Dawkins in his elderly years to being a full-fledged, on-fire Christian? So pray for that.
Yeah, no, and I know that there have been people around him who have become, Christians as well. But I think it's interesting, right? Like, think about this comment that is made. So in the article, it says, Dawkins nevertheless dismissed the fundamental claims of Christianity, such as the virgin birth, the resurrection, emphasizing his belief that such supernatural assertions are nonsense, though he acknowledged their importance from a cultural point of view, right? So that's important, right? That he looks at that and he says, that it's all nonsense to me. Oh, but I really do think that these are important culturally. And it's like, okay, so you don't believe it, you reject it, but that you still want what it has to offer. And it's absolutely inconsistent of what you're saying you want. And see, to me, I think that's just it's curious, right? That people think that you can live in a world where we can say, well, we can toss out Jesus, we can toss out that stuff and still have this. And you rightly said, right? If truly, if you want to press on the evolutionary piece, that really there is no value judgment you can make about these things, right? That at the end of the day, it's going to be which is the most dominating and what survival of the fittest is going to come play out. And so I think it's quite curious that he doesn't agree with it, and yet he wants to. And I do want to say, like, okay, then why do you agree with those pieces? You don't agree with the Jesus stuff, but why do you agree with certain tenets of? And so what you're seeing in here too is he's also picking and choosing in a certain way of what stuff he likes about Christianity and something that he doesn't. And so he has said obviously he said many things about what he thinks about the God of the Bible. And yet there's certain things that are in this of what it means to be a cultural Christian, of certain things that he wants, because it brings him to the point, like these are some of the famous quotes from the article too. he says, he talks about, he says the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women and to gays. And I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith. So no, obviously he does, right? Obviously there are certain things that have made England the way that it has been. There have been certain things that have come from the Christian faith that have made it to where it has been a place of freedom to be able to live a certain way that he does agree with and that he does like. But I'd still think that, so maybe this what needs to get pressed in this conversation is, what does it truly mean to be a cultural Christian then? And it seems to be, and what he is simply saying is that you can be a cultural Christian in the sense that you do things that are, I don't know, you sing songs and obviously there needs to be some cultural piece to it too, right? Because in what he's saying is the culture that cultural Christianity brings is better and more beneficial than what he sees as the culture of Islam that has been brought in. So that's why I think we need to press on this for just a second and say,
Yeah.
what are the things of cultural Christianity that you enjoy? Because it seems to be that it's not just the shell, it's not just the lights, it's not just the holidays and the songs, that there needs to be something that's going on that's changing people and changing the place in which you live. So much so that you're in that article, as you had discussed before we got on, right? As he says, as far as Christianity can seen as a bulwark of Islam, I think it's a very good thing. In fact, in Africa, for example, where you have missionaries of both faiths operating, I'm on Team Christians as far as that's concerned. It's like, okay,
Who is this talking?
Yeah, what is this? Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are interesting conversations we have. And it must mean what he's not admitting, but what it's heavily implied is there's much more than just how it looks and how it feels in the holidays, right? Like, because there has to be, in his pushback against what he sees as the rise of Islam in England. So I think it's like you said, the fruits without the tree.
And what I would love to kind of push on him a little bit is, do you think that Christianity produced these things by accident? Do you think it was just lucky? Because he's an evolutionist, and I think he ought to be much happier with Islam. Islam believes in a transcendent God that's really not knowable, that it's wholly different than us. And so, hey, you know, that's agnostic to some degree for an evolutionist. And then is not expected that the male will dominate the female in most species. And so women would be subjected in the religion of Islam in a way that they're not in Christianity. And Muhammad performed no miracles. There's no miraculous thing to believe in the story of Islam in its founding, because all that Muhammad was able to accomplish was to provide the Quran. But there is no supernaturalistic things that you have to believe in to be Islamic. So the reality is his attacks on Christianity have so demoralized people who grew up in church, who loved the hymns, who enjoyed the beautiful cathedrals and have an affinity for this, but their faith was destroyed by people like by Dawkins, Richard Dawkins. I wanted to say Charles Dickens. That's
No,
someone else.
We liked him. Yeah.
But he is the one that prepped Islam to come in, because you can become Islamic and hold almost everything that he's been teaching, and then he doesn't like it. Well, Christianity never should have been ascendant. Christianity it flies in the face of the evolutionary proposal. And I hope that he will look at the evidence of the things that he loves and finds beautiful and say, oh my goodness, I need to become a true believer in Jesus Christ, because the reality of Christianity defies the evolutionary proposition. And the reality is the secularists have taken something and pushed it beyond the grounds of what Christianity would affirm. But if he likes those things, evolution says that the LMNOP movement violates the role in the law of biology that we believe. Yeah. It can't perpetuate. There can't be a gene for that, because it would not perpetuate itself. And so he's actually willing to kind of throw his evolutionary beliefs of the universe aside for his secular cultural desires to be implemented. But he realizes that those have no basis in evolution. They were needed to be founded through a Christian appreciation of the dignity of human beings, which he doesn't believe.
Yeah.
Because in evolution, we're just glorified animals. There's no real dignity.
So
So
here's something I think we should press on too. Let's talk about the relationship between what we're seeing here in America, right? Because I would say we have a very similar problem in America in the sense of the cultural Christianity.
Yep.
I used to be against the idea of cultural Christianity, in the idea that people would say that they're culturally Christian. I do think that cultural Christianity is important, that the culture in which we live in is important, that it's there. However, I think a takeaway from this article that I think is important is that it's not enough to simply have a culture of Christianity,
No.
right? It's not enough to that we would still just have our people who would come to Easter and they'll come to Christmas and they'll do certain Christian things, because it seems like there's people like him are still enjoying Easter, which I think is absolutely fabulous. It's like I still love the Christmas carols and all that kind of stuff, right? And so people enjoy this. But what you're seeing is if that's all your faith is, if all my faith is that I do these things because these are traditions that we have done, you will see what will happen in your country. That reminds me, by the way, and then I'll go to my biblical point. It reminds me of if you've ever watched the movie Patterns of Evidence, and it's the first one talking about the Exodus, and he's interviewing Israel Finkelstein in Israel. He's talking about the evidence for the Passover. So here is this Jewish guy who's an archaeologist, and he doesn't believe that the Passover happened. And as he's there, he says, but that doesn't matter to me. What matters is I'm participating in a tradition that has been passed on from generation to generation to generation. And so that to him is the best part, right? Is that I do something that we've always done, but there's no real belief that it happened or truly meant something. And so that I bring up though too, is I feel like if we're not careful, if people who are, hopefully, if you're watching this or listening to this, you're not somebody who would say, I'm a cultural Christian. What we're seeing is that the alarm should be going on and say, is my faith more than I attend something? Is my faith more than just simply I do the songs and I play the Christian music? Like what we're seeing is that England, it seems, has been lost because people were just playing pretend, right? They still did certain Christian things, but there was nothing about them, how they lived, how they lived out their life, how they did what they needed to do in order to keep that Christian culture, to keep a pushback against all that would creep in and change that life. And I think about like Revelation. Obviously, this is such a clear, easy one, right? Where Jesus says to the church of Laodicea, I know your works, you're neither cold or hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you're lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. You say I'm rich, I become wealthy and need nothing, and you don't realize that you're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I advise you to buy from me gold refined with fire so that you may be rich, white clothes so that you may be dressed and your shameful nakedness not be exposed, and ointment spread on your eyes so that you may see. As many as I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be zealous and repent. See, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come to him and eat with him, and he with me. So I do think that this is just a good thing for us to look at and say, does my faith, if you're listening, does your faith more than the cultural pieces, right? Is there more to your faith than I come to church 2 times a month, 3 times a month? Because if so, you are contributing to the fact that at some point there will be a complete vacuum that's coming, and that your country, your life, your culture will be swallowed up with something else that will come in because the vacuum is starting. And that's my takeaway in this, is that if we don't have more to our lifestyle than just the externals, it'll be swallowed up and replaced with something else. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I think it's important. This is why, as Baptists, we focus on the importance of conversion, that we don't assume everybody's saved just because they come to church or their parents were Christians, that there's got to be a real surrender of one's life to Jesus Christ, a real confession of sins, a real giving of one's life over to Jesus, who has purchased it with his blood. And without that conversion, then you're just going through the motions. And a generation going through the motions raises up a generation that starts saying, why do we need these motions? And that's where we're at. Maybe there's different motions. Who's to say that Christianity is better than Islam? I mean, most young people coming through our public school sector would be horrified to have to answer the question, which religion provides the definitive best for its people historically? Are you allowed to ask such a question? Who defines best? So it would be a shame. But Dawkins recognizes Christianity has produced better fruit than Islam, and he's terrified of Islam taking over because he recognizes it'll be the destruction of the nation that gave him such academic freedom as to pursue his own destruction liberally. That's a benefit of Christianity because we did not force our God on him. But Islam historically has not operated that way. So, that things change. Maybe he'll become an Islam by the sword, a Muslim by the sword. This is something that, I think he's got legitimate concerns about this because that is the way things have worked in the past. But Christians, and those listening, do you truly believe what we're talking about? I hear that pastors preaching on Easter that they don't believe in the resurrection. Well, then quit your job and get out of the pulpit. We need genuine followers of Christ. And I think that what's exciting right now is that cultural Christianity is waning in its popularity in the West, which means that we're going to have a much white hot, fiery, a greater percentage of the people going to church will be fiery hot, real deal Christians. And we need that really on fire core to set the world aflame for Christ once again. And so all the people who've just been playing along, enjoying the fruits, but not really believing in the tree, it'll be wonderful for them to vacate so that we can actually build something real again. So I'm excited about the future. It probably entails persecution in some places that we've not had to worry about it for years. But, there's something wonderful when you really know that the people coming and worshiping with you believe what we're worshiping. And so I'm excited about it. But it is, the call for those listening is, do you believe that what you believe is really real, right?
Yeah. Last thing I would say in closing, because I think we have to talk about relation to government. I asked to bring up Baptist Faith and Message.
Yeah, I've got religious liberty. Did you pull it up too?
I got it. I got it here
okay.
too. And I think it says, that state has no right to impose penalties for religious opinions of any kind. The state has no right to impose taxes for the support of any form of religion. A free church in a free state is the Christian ideal. And this implies the right of free and unhindered access to God on the part of all men, and the right to form and propagate opinions in the sphere of religion without interference by the civil power. Look, I understand what that's saying, which is that's what we would love, is for churches to be able to operate without the government telling us what to do and how to live. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring our Christianity into the public sphere. It doesn't mean that we should not push for Christians to be in places of government, because as we come back to this, is that how will we legislate? How will we build our laws? How will we build a culture without some sort of a bedrock, some place to start from? And right now, that's been slowly eroding. And what we're seeing in the story too is even with them, they're not even standing on the fact that they are Christian. Now, Dawkins seems to be claiming, "What's up with this?" Right? I thought we are. But I think that's important for Christians to recognize too, is that we should want to see people in those places. And I think that's perfectly compatible with what we see as Baptist Faith and Message, which is have Christians in there so that we are making a cultural difference for the country, and yet at the same time make it to where we are. Yeah, we want this to continue to thrive. We want conditions to continue to be for the blessings, for the freedom of religion in this country too. And I think you can do that. I think with Christianity you can. That is what ends up happening. If you have a Christian influence at the cultural level, there is freedom for all of that, as you have even said. Without it, there's not really. I mean, you were already seeing now to have different viewpoints on things, if you don't tote the line, if you don't have the same opinion, if you don't go along with what at least our government wants or what the cultural view of the day is, there's no debate. There's no questioning. It is this, or, and many people have seen you lose your job. Many people see you post this, you're done, kind of a thing. So we're starting to see that stuff even stop. And I think Christianity is the response, right?
Yeah.
That it's only through freedom that we are allowed to have these kind of conversations. So I think we should
Yeah.
bring that in.
I think the hope here, because I know that there's a lot of discussion. Maybe we were deceiving ourselves that the idea is that we could have a neutral playing field. But I think that the reality is that the statement here in the Baptist Faith Message is the idea that if given a neutral playing field, Christ wins out, and we don't need the state coming in to implement something over one denomination or another, one religious group over another. But what we have failed to really define in America, in our American story, is that secularism should be defined as a religion. Atheism should be defined as a religion, or an approach that basically is being operated right now through our public school system and through all kinds of other mechanisms of the government, is that the way that we'll level the playing field is by abject secularism. And that way we'll keep all the religions, knocked down equally. But the religious fervor for secularism should be understood by us as a religious advantage given by the government. The government is funding these clubs in our schools. The government is funding these practices in the medical community. The government is driving this in a way that is in contradiction to what we say here, is that they should not be promoting this religion of secularism in our world, because secularism without massive financial support is not going to trump Christianity. But now what you're seeing is secularism is becoming the default, and so anything that even challenges it, it gets driven out. So now we've lost our religious opportunity even to speak freely about Christ.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things I think Christians miss here, because they're afraid that we're going to have like a church-driven state, and that's not what we're calling for. What we're calling for is what we really are wanting is government stay in your lane, stay in your sphere, and let the church run its sphere. And the result, I'm confident, will be that we'll recapture this nation for Christ, and hopefully the West, and maybe the rest of the world.
I like to end it at that, man. I think we're out of time. We don't have there's no end to the Zoom link, but I know that I feel like we've kind of hit our most that we can talk on this. Just an interesting comment. I love the memes that have come from this, by the way. I don't know, have you seen the memes of Richard Dawkins shooting the guy, and then it says like, Christianity, and then it's like, what's on with this Ramadan stuff that's like popped up? It's like, what happened there?
Yeah. At least he's got the courage to say, hey, this is objectively worse than what we had.
Yeah. I mean, nobody is. I mean, there's some honesty that's being said that at least, he's not pretending, which I've always found is interesting, is that I've been seeing this trajectory of late and I've noticed it for a long time, is in an attempt to get rid of Christians, that there has been a linking up with Islam, and they don't quite understand that it will not stay that way. They don't quite understand what they're getting themselves into. So anyways, that's all I've got. I'm done. If you're done, you got anything else?
I'm done. I mean, we could keep going, but yeah, let's give it a stopping point.
Bottom in this thing too. So if you want to read the articles yourself on it, but all right, let's finish up right. Let's do it.
All right.
May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. Hey guys, Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you a little bit later. Bye.